Cinema Classics is sponsored by the Gateway Film Center. It is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to shows online at WCBE.org. I'm John DeSando.
I'm Johnny DiLoretto. This is Cinema Classics.
It is. And recently, we did a terrific job on Tom Cruise.
Can anybody? Yes. Can you do that guy justice at all?
And I remember from that show, you were asking if Tom had had some problems. Might have been drinking, whatever, and we didn't know, and probably not true. But here's a boy who has had problems.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy. A guy who has managed to become, I think, I don't want to say a household name, but certainly well-known, certainly an A-lister. I don't know that Tom Hardy opens a movie.
I know.
Like, people don't go see a movie just because Tom Hardy is in it, but he's definitely somebody we talk about, somebody we know that name, right? He's got an interesting track record, and I have been doing some homework. I've been catching up on a lot of Tom Hardy movies. I think he's fascinating to watch, and I would posit to you, John, that you know how Nicolas Cage, how we think of Nicolas Cage now, the go-to guy for over-the-top insanity, really sort of egregious but fluid acting moves. This is, I think, where Tom Hardy is headed. He's headed towards this realm of you want someone who's crazy over-the-top performances, but still you can't say he's definitely not a bad actor. He's a great actor, sometimes doing weird stuff.
Well, like Cruise, perhaps best known for action, and that would be the Mad Max.
Yes, which, he's barely in it.
I know that.
He's barely doing anything.
But if you ask somebody, they're certainly not going to say Locke.
No, although that's what they should say.
I think they should, exactly. So he's not the glamour puss that we saw Tom Cruise to be.
No, if you really want to see what Tom Hardy is capable of, you should watch Locke. It's available to stream or rent or whatever. That movie, he plays an Irish construction worker. Is he Irish? I can't remember. Let's say he's British. He's a construction worker. He is in a car and he's driving to where? That's a spoiler. The camera stays in the car with him the entire time.
Well, I've got friends who will not sit through this.
Really?
Yeah, just because the camera's static and we're looking at him as he's driving. I mean, people who aren't as forgiving as we are.
Well, I will say this. I was watching it with my wife, and about 10 minutes into the movie, she says, wait a minute. She said, wait a minute. Are we going to stay in this car the whole time? And I said, yes, we are. But 5 minutes after that, riveted.
Yes.
You're riveted by what this guy is going through. He is in every scene, obviously. Yeah. There is some great supporting voice work by really talented people, including Andrew Scott and Olivia. She won the Oscar. No, she won the Oscar for. The Favorite. Yeah, bless it. Okay, he's got great support.
Yes.
In this movie, and he's riveting. And it's a very loquacious performance. He is, he's got a lot of lines, and everybody accuses Tom Hardy of mumbling. He is not mumbling in this movie. It's a really fascinating thing to watch, and definitely if you want to, see what the guy's capable of, that's the one, because the camera doesn't leave the guy's face.
No. And, you alluded to the mumbling and the mumblecore, which is the way to characterize these very heavy actors who are whose naturalism forces them to kind of mumble the way somebody would mumble now, because that means they're making also a comparison with Marlon Brando,
right? Which drives me crazy. But so I thought about this a little bit, and Owen Gleiberman wrote a really nice piece in Variety, basically saying that Tom Hardy is an extraordinarily talented actor, but he's got to stop with this crazy mumbling. And he really, gets at the heart of what Brando is doing, and then he lays bare the limitations of what Hardy is doing. Now, Brando actually wasn't mumbling. It seemed like he was mumbling because he was doing something so naturalistic. You don't ever not understand what Brando is saying. Tom Hardy, it seems to me, is doing something a little different. Here's the other thing about Brando, is what was revolutionary about what Brando was doing was how natural he was. He was bringing natural behavior to the screen,
Sure.
right? A scratch of the nose here, a hesitation there,
Yep.
fiddling with something in his hands. What Tom Hardy is doing is not that. What Tom Hardy is doing is a sort of almost like a weird take on he's making unnatural the natural, it seems to me. It's like, you know what I mean? There's nothing natural about it. He's exaggerating certain things, and it becomes sort of unreal, eminently watchable, but
Yes,
unreal. And that's Gleiberman's point, was that it's hollow.
Yes, and I think he's right. I think you're right. He takes it to a point where he's inaudible, or he is so interior in that mumbling, where Brando was always out there. Now, here's one of the ways that I can deal with mumblecore.
Yeah.
I put on closed caption,
Oh yeah, right.
right?
For sure.
In fact, I'm
By the way,
starting to do that most films.
Watching a film with closed caption is really, I would say, it gives you an insight into the stuff that you usually miss.
I love it.
And not just what the characters are saying.
Yeah.
But the sound cues.
Yeah, they'll say something's in the background.
Yeah, right. And isn't that great? Because you wouldn't have paid attention to it otherwise.
They'll characterize the music as melancholy music.
Right.
They do some really good stuff.
Yeah, it is interesting, but I'm mostly interested in two things. The stuff that they describe that's going on off screen.
The ambient noise.
And here's the other thing. When the line comes up before the actor says it, it creates a weird sort of disconnect and reconnect with the movie. Because now you know what the line is.
Yes.
Which does the film a disservice. But also now you're going to listen. You're listening closely to the performance. How does the actor sell that line? You know what I mean?
Oh, I agree.
It becomes a really... Anyway, this is a huge diversion from the...
He can be a good baddie.
Yeah.
Dark Knight Rises. Bane.
Great bad. Great villain.
Yeah.
Physically imposing.
Yes.
One of the movies that put him on the map was Bronson.
Yes.
Nicholas Winding Refn.
Yes.
Biopic of the most notorious criminal in British history. And it is another physically imposing performance, but also dynamic, and you're getting all of that great Hardy stuff. You can see what the guy's capable of there. When you look at performances like Bronson, and then Locke, and then check out a movie that came out 1 year after Locke, The Drop.
Oh, I love The Drop.
James Gandolfini's last movie.
Oh, yes.
Now that, for me, is Hardy at his Brando best. Right down to the shearling collar jacket that he's wearing on the waterfront.
What about? I got one for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, you would think that all of this comes recently into Capone.
Yeah.
And, I mean, except for talking to you and reading some reviews, I was going to hop on that immediately. I'm not so sure. I can go through his over the top.
You got to.
I know.
It's so much fun. The first half of the movie is like a dark comedy. And I'm pretty sure it's deliberate.
Okay.
The other reason you should watch it is because the director, Josh Trank, has an interesting career, right? He burst onto the scene with Chronicle, low-budget, found-footage superhero movie. Then was immediately given a big-budget job directing the reboot of The Fantastic Four, which he famously and spectacularly failed and fumbled. And then he found himself on the outs. This movie he wrote, directed, and edited. And that's an interesting combination. You don't always see that.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was him. He's like getting back to a smaller sort of framework, and Tom Hardy. They're up to something weird. It does not work. It ultimately doesn't work. But I would also venture to say you will see fewer, more interesting things.
And don't you think he's picked good directors?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a hallmark, I think, of some of
He's
these
worked
great
with
actors.
Christopher Nolan at
Yes.
least 3 times.
I know,
Right?
Inception being one.
Inception, The Dark Knight Rises, and Dunkirk.
Oh, and Dunkirk, right, yeah. And another one where, like Locke, you're locked into his face
Right.
in that plane.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's so interesting to me, what a good actor that he can keep your attention even though not a whole lot is going on. He's
doing
flying the
everything with
plane.
his eyes, yeah.
He's doing everything with his eyes.
You know, there's a lot of talk about Tom Hardy right now. Venom was a surprise hit.
Yes.
It seemed like that was an impossibility that movie found an audience.
Yeah.
But if you want to steer clear of that stuff, another great Hardy performance is I forgot what I was going to say now. We were talking about Inception, Dunkirk.
Right. Yeah. Well, I thought you were moving up to this point. He has been talked about for James Bond.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
He
Well,
said,
he's too old now.
okay.
I think he's too old, and what did I want to say? I don't know. Maybe it'll come to me. Anyway, yeah, the James Bond thing.
Yeah.
Let's just assume for a minute Tom Hardy wasn't too old to start playing James Bond for 10 years. There's something a little too brutish.
Oh,
about him.
yes.
And there's something a little too imperfect about him. Now I know Daniel Craig is not exactly
He's not as elegant, Daniel Craig,
Right.
as you would have expected.
right.
But he does carry it off.
Yeah,
Where Hardy is just so much of a brute
yeah.
that it's tough to see it.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. The movie that's worth seeing for a brutish Tom Hardy, but not a mumbling Tom Hardy, is Warrior
Oh,
with Joel Edgerton,
oh,
where they play MMA fighting brothers
oh,
who
okay.
find themselves squaring off in a championship bout. That is a really interesting movie.
And you'd have to say the Oscar is in his future. He won it, didn't he? Yes, for supporting actor in The Revenant.
He won?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
yeah, and it was a really terrific role. I mean, he has
Again, a villain.
Yes,
There's the guy who bounces back and forth from playing a hero and a villain.
I'm sorry, he was nominated. Once
Nominated.
again, typically me. I elevate them.
Immediately.
And then you're there to tell me, I don't
well,
think
that
so.
one I didn't know. Okay. Well, you know what? It's funny when you said that. Immediately, I was trying to think about the moment that Tom Hardy took the stage to accept an Oscar, and I couldn't picture it. I couldn't picture that guy up there, you know, and what would he say? What would a guy like that say? And that is kind of the mystique, the Tom Hardy mystique, right? He definitely has this bad boy thing about him. He definitely has this this fun. We know that he's a fun character based on his social media presence. But what is he really like? And I don't think we've really gotten a great idea of who he is as a person. It did come as a surprise to me to learn that he's the father of 2 or 3 kids.
Women love those brutes.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to always lose because we're so sensitive
I know.
and so sweet.
Yeah, we're always.
Tom Hardy, that finishes our twin bill of Tom Cruise and Tom Hardy.
You got it.